Okay, so welcome everybody to the chat, or excuse me, to the video for family portals. What we're going to talk about today is how to use Sam's public forms to make kind of a single shop or a single stop, let's say, for families to interact on the web with your team. So outside of your website, how to connect the checklists that we've talked about, like application forms and other forms that families have used, into a single place that we're going to name the family portal, because that seems to be a common term that folks are using to get to recognize that kind of concept. Okay, so our agenda is going to be what is the portal, what kind of things that you'd show on it, what to include on here. I will also talk a little bit about managing the sidebar, how you access the sidebar for public forms, and what types of public forms will allow a sidebar. And then we'll talk a little bit about messaging, because I've changed up how the messaging is presented on these public forms, and I think it looks a lot better. So you guys, of course, will be the judge of that, and we'll certainly take that and make that your own spin. So the portal is kind of a single location for all the links that your family might interact with. Okay, so this would be including those checklists that we've built for families, public forms like the application form, be a references form. I am working on an application for an agency specific to background checks. Other types of forms that they might interact with. So I've shown you like Amara's site before, where they have families uploading documents about the current placements that they have. You might take families to post-adoption reports. You might take them to other types of monitoring that happens, or medication administration that's happening during a placement for specific kids. I also think that you can use the sidebar links to link families to external resources. So I've linked families to the Minnesota DHS rules for licensing, and I'll show you that. But you can do all kinds of links that would take families to specific lists of documents or referral information that you have hosted on your website, or for other types of information. I have important messaging that I've added, and then I really want to hear from you about what else. Okay, so what other types of messaging or things are you guys looking for? So I'm going to log into the site now, and let me just grab my family's email address once more. Pop that in here and then log in. Okay, so this is what I would consider a family portal. This is kind of like my thought. The family portal is going to be a public form that's set as a view form. So it's got those two characteristics. It also has the sidebar that will link it to specific things like the checklist. Maybe you want to talk to them about their home study or the licensing or approval process. Any adoptions or placements. This is going to depend on if you're coming from the adoptive family side or the foster family side, and what tables you have available. I've got them linked to updating their own information. So how to add a new address or provide you a new email address if they've changed that information. And then sending notes to the advisor. So I think this is kind of a piece that will be new that we can talk about. Every public form allows you to add messaging. So a couple things that I did here was, one, really include a lot of messaging that points families into their expectations and your expectations of them, what they can expect from this site, and a nice general welcoming message to the portal, I think, is really important. By default, Sam has a space here that is labeled I think it's called the public form field title, something like that. Like, you've got an internal title for a form and an external title for a form, and it's got a particular look. I've used some HTML to override that so that I mean, I could have labeled it like that, but I wanted a little bit bigger, bolder text. And so I was able to do that. So I can show you guys, we can work together if you decide this is something that you want to provide that to folks. Right here, I've added kind of basics about them so that they know what addresses they've got on file. You could certainly provide their contact information to them, but really telling them about their case. Okay. There's also a case navigation. This particular family only has one case, but it will allow you to toggle between the multiple cases if they have more than one. And then I am also providing this family with who their social worker is. This would be great if you call it an adoption advisor or the case coordinator, whatever kind of title you've given to the folks that are supporting the work that you guys are doing. Generally, I see kind of a case coordinator position and then a social worker that is accomplishing the home study, or once the family and child or family and birth mother have been connected, that social worker that is supporting them at that point. You can certainly provide both folks. Something else that I've added to see if this functioned, and I really like it, is to share some communications with them. So this is literally the family communications table and form, but it's a different form that I filtered to specific communication topic types. Okay, so we've talked about this in other subforms webinars, but any multi-record table, when you look at the forms, you could base a form and filter it on specific types. So this is showing us just communications that we've deemed as a team that we want to share with the family, or that the family is sharing with us. So I've also linked an ad form here, and I recognize what's going on with the shifting ad form. It's feeling really weird to me too. So in the interface update, we shouldn't have to deal with that. But this allows the family here to message us. Right? Okay, so I can send this out. This would be like the family is sending that message. It's now here. And just so that you can see this on the family's record, oops, not the case checklist. Let me go to the communications record. I've got this message right here, okay, which is what I just sent. I've added automation to that ad form to automatically set the communication topic type to families update from the portal, so that we could tell Sam through an auto action that anytime a message like this comes, to send an email to the adoption advisor or the case coordinator. So you are immediately being communicated with. I think a lot of people liked that on the checklist, when a full section is done, that the family can prompt you to let you know. So I think that's a really great way to see that. And certainly here in the communications section, I've got this subform of communications based just around case notes. We could do the same thing for family updates from the portal, right? To have just a separate section to see those aside from all the rest of the email coordination that's happening. So I actually really like that. You could communicate as well to this family specific notes that you want to share. So let me show you how I have this organized. Settings, public form links. In your public form links, I'm pretty sure everybody has a family client portal or family client form. And that's what this one is starting from. And I'm going to show you just this communication subform. So click here. I had literally just clicked advanced options, add subform, created a new subform, and connected it to the family communications. But what I want to talk about here is under really advanced options is the filters and criteria. So this is showing us all communications where either we're updating to the family on the progress, where it's like a note that we are giving internally that we want to display to the family, or where it's showing a family's update. We could also say, I just want to show the ones from the past month as well, right? So maybe we want it to be either one of these, but it must be also a communication within the last month. So we're not seeing this long list of the last 2 years worth of important notes that, 12 months ago, it's not that important to see anymore. And I think that would be really, really helpful to take a look at as options. Is anybody online that can hear and would like to talk kind of to the group about that? I had talked with Steve. He's not able to join us from North Homes today, but he thought that would be an excellent idea. And when I started to build that, I think it's a really cool feature to get communication. Other things then, let's see, on the sidebar is the checklist. So instead of just directing families directly to the checklist, generally people are doing that through an emailed template. I've connected them to the checklist from that family portal. So again, like this one-stop shop, rather than having a lot of kind of disconnected forms, that they're all connected here. So again, I've overwritten because I want a consistency with the big text to kind of let them know what's going on. Let me double check here. Okay. And then the checklist sections are listed down below. So we've already talked in other webinars about the checklist and how you build it, but I do think, again, kind of providing messaging to the family and by making these things pretty consistent with a consistent set of icons and ways in which you communicate your message to the family makes a big impact on how this looks and how it will go over. So we had looked at MLJ Adoptions. I think they're out of Indiana. Their checklist section, they've used the icons really well and explain to families that each icon actually links them out to different information, which is totally applicable when you're adding in the template to this. You double click and you can set a link. You double click on the icon and you can set a link to something else. These checklist sections, instead of having lots of different forms kind of going down my family portal sidebar, I've linked the forms in the checklist, right? So they are things that we want this family to do. So I went through kind of my application form as well and made it also consistent with the messaging. I have always loved this little icon set that I think it just makes clearer kind of what the expectation is, right? So as the family goes through this 6-part form, we're taken through multiple pages, okay? I did talk to the developer about, well, once I'm on page 2, what if I want to go back to page 3? So I had a link. It's kind of a little bit of a script that we need to input, but this can be done. So it's really easy to just add into the HTML of the template and set the prior form. So we can talk specifically to that if that's something that you'd like to incorporate. I also think it'd be pretty cool to have if each of these were its own image, each of these being linked to to that specific form as well, so that you can get back to them. Okay, but then right now at this point, the family can toggle back through and get to each place. We probably don't want them to leave this application form and take them back to the case checklist, because we really want them to complete it and get through that part. Okay. Do you guys have any questions or thoughts about the checklist? I talked about other types of links. So I think you'll want to consider what makes sense for your specific programs. I imagine if you have very different programs as well, that you could have, like if you've got foster care and adoption, you may not have the same need to show licensing information on your adoption program. And so you really might want two separate client portals depending on your program type. Okay. Because then you would have different checklist sections that would show for each, or sidebar links. Home studies and approvals. So this is showing all of their home studies. However, we might just really want to show this family their current license, right? Or their current home study. Again, this is going to depend on your program and what's how you have set up the difference between licensing and home studies. But you could show either the current or a history of. I've included on here kind of the education and training. Some agencies, we've got a layer above the education and training for the current provider year, and then they can add their training underneath. So just like the communications for this for this sub form, I've got an add form. So here the family could actually upload and talk to us about what kind of training they've taken. Okay. Put it in, the date that they completed it, any memo they want, if they've got a training certificate. This is going to depend on what do you want to provide or get the family to enter. I decided, even though we track hours, that maybe the family doesn't input their hours, but that is something that your team monitors. From each of these forms, if it's important for you to get an email from Sam, you can absolutely set that up. So that's like an auto action. A lot of times on forms, if we were to go here, edit form, you can check the email notification settings, right? So every time they submit this form or they press save on this, it could email to a specific person. So that can be set up directly from the form or from an auto action. Same with automatically entered field values. So every time they enter this, maybe they're not hitting the date completed. Maybe that's going to be automatically set to the current date. You could also tag things as like family entered rather than your team entered, so that you guys can tell the difference of whether or not the family is entering that, and do you need to actually review those steps rather than what your team has entered. So if I add this, let's see, controls. Is anyone by chance trying to talk to me? Anything like that, and check in there. Once I press save, I've set every form to kind of take me back to the specific page of the site that I want them to take, want to direct the user to. So if I'm adding licensing and training, I kind of want them to see that they've got this. But you can see we're showing them hours earned, but the family doesn't have the opportunity to actually add the number of hours. So that's always something to consider when you're offering forms for a family, is even though that's a collection piece, it doesn't mean that that's what you're going to display to the family. So internally, you've got a view, and externally for your families, they've got some information that they can either see or edit. It would be possible to add edit links here as well. So just like your internal forms, to have edit links. This is where one of Steve's suggestions was like to look at the Minnesota DHS rules. So we've talked about this when we looked at sidebar links, is that you can actually link to external information inside of SAM or through these public forms as well. So this will take us right to like the Department of Human Services, like how to be a foster care provider, right? So for the state, so that the family can always reference that. Again, I think if you have specific web pages that you like to refer families to, I think that these sidebar links are a great spot for that. And I'm not sure if on this form, let's see, if I go back to this parent education and I go back to this licensing and approvals form, and if I hit the sidebar, what I'm not sure of is if you can set these sidebar links like to open in a new form, right? So what I noticed right there was that Minnesota DHS, it took me, it moved me from that same tab right into that site. I imagine that like through here, something like this, you can link to open in a new tab. I'll double check that out and see how that's possible. And if there's ways like in this new interface that we can kind of make that like a checkbox rather than having to write some HTML in there. But it kind of anything is possible if you want to do that. You would just let me know and we'll work that in. While this offers advanced options, I don't know that it makes so much sense to add sidebar links for advanced options, nor have I done it. So I don't know if I add a link there, will suddenly it say advanced options right there, kind of like it does internally. But I think making things really open and quick for the family to access is going to be helpful. So we're at kind of our time, but I'm curious if people are on the phone, what kind of questions do you have? If you can talk to me, let me see. Let's see. Does anybody? Oops. Does anybody have questions or ideas that you're thinking? Would this be helpful, or do you want to see more on a specific part? The other thing I did talk about, but I haven't shown it, is just updating your info. So this is just taking the family to an edit form. This is kind of like what you've got on file for the family. So all of their email addresses, all their phone numbers, you could certainly provide other types of information. And then I've got another add form or update form to update it, right? Which is going to take you to where they would fill it in. And they've got a new email address, so they can enter that and press save. So now things are updated, right? So this email address here, oops, here has been updated. I do like on through the sidebar to kind of constantly bring them back to the main portal so they can get there. And you know what I love about Sam is that you're not stuck with the name client family portal or client portal, whatever you want to call that. You have the ability to name that. So you can build in kind of your terminology for how this functions. Oh, I'm real sorry about us not being able to talk that much through this site or through any of the other things. And I just can't tell if everybody's feeling really comfortable with that, that's great. I think there's a lot that could be done. These adoption, I didn't get to this form as well as I think I wanted to, but I had shown previously through Amara's site, kind of, they've got placements. So they do foster care placements. Same kind of concept would go. And instead of just kind of ending the information here with like, here are your adoption records, you can certainly have a details form. So that's it's kind of dealing with this sub forms, and you connect the details form to it. That would have more information about the adoption that you might want to share with the family, or you can keep it really trim. And then it could have the post adoption, the post Post-placement contacts, so contacts that you have between the family and the birth mother. Maybe you have forms where the family can just upload images of the child, send a narrative, and that comes directly, that is then shared to the birth mother, if that's the way that that messaging is done. You might have documents. So Amara had added placement documents. If the family needed to upload new medication records or school documents that they had retrieved about the youth that's been placed in their home, they could just upload that, and the team will get access to that. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking along those lines, and those can be easily done. They will literally look the same as this, the same as the other pieces that we've done around home study and licensing. Everything about placements would function the same. Let's see. So I'm not getting anybody that's writing me any questions. I hope I'm not missing a whole bunch out of this weird technology day that I'm having. But what I will do is maybe start a dialogue with folks, because I would really love to get your feedback about the family portal. So let's do this. Let's go here. Jump back in here. So I'm going to go ahead and end. I appreciate you joining. All of our webinars can be seen on inreachsolutions.com/webinars. I will upload this one and maybe send some additional referral or reference material for you guys. I'm going to do another webinar at the end of August. I will send information, and once I figure out who my new web people are going to be, as far as webinar, how do we connect? I'll send you more details of that. And then one in September as well. So thanks you guys for joining. Thank you for jumping back on to the new video. I hope that you could hear me, and I hope that you get some ideas. So send me notes through support@inreachsolutions.com or to my email, and we'll start talking about how to develop your site for you if you'd like to do this. All right, take care.